Yep.
Okay. Just as a prelude to the meeting, to remind people that we are meeting remotely. This is the Culver Redevelopment Commission on July 20th, 2020 at 5 p.m. We are meeting in accordance with the executive orders of Governor Holcomb, which permits government bodies and meetings to take place remotely because of the COVID-19 situation. A reminder is that this meeting is being taped and it will be posted and rebroadcast. If you choose to participate in the meeting and talk, that is your consent to be recorded and replayed in at a future point or when the meeting is posted. Thirdly, I would ask that everyone on telephones please mute your device, and also on computers, if you can mute your device unless you would like to speak. That will cut down on the background noise and also the interference. If there's nothing else, I'd like to proceed with the roll call. Paul, I think you're on the phone or on the line.
I am.
Would you mind taking roll call, please?
Certainly. Rich West.
Present.
Sally Ricciardi.
Present.
Paul DeBenedictis. Present. Karen Schumann.
Present.
Sue McInturf.
Present.
Tom Uhas.
Present.
All present.
Okay, thank you. I mentioned earlier, and it was before many of you were on the call, I'm having some internet issues and bandwidth issues. I find that if I don't use a video, I have fewer problems and the voice comes across much clearer. And Jonathan complained about losing the picture of me, but I think he'll just have to suffer through that. So without further ado, we'd move on to the minutes. Paul had circulated a draft and I recirculated them again this morning. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes for the June 15th, 2020 meeting. Is there such a motion?
This is Sally. I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
Okay, a motion being made. Is there a second on that motion?
This is Tom. I'll second.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion to approve the June 15th minutes made by Sally and seconded by Tom. Is there any discussion? If not, we'll move the question. And Paul, could you take the roll, please?
Certainly. I'll go alphabetically by last name, starting with Paul DeBenedictis. Aye. Sue McInturf.
Aye.
Sally Ricciardi.
Aye.
Rich West.
Aye.
Tom Uhas.
Aye.
All ayes.
Okay, thank you very much. Karen had circulated, I believe, the June financial statement. I think everyone had a chance, hopefully, to review it. Are there any questions about that statement? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the June 2020 financial statements for the Redevelopment Commission.
This is Paul. I make such a motion.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
This is Sue. I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion to approve the June 2020 financial statements for the Redevelopment Commission, made by Paul and seconded by Sue. Is there any discussion? Karen, did you want anything to say or chime in on anything on this? Okay. If not, Paul, I would ask that you take the roll.
Okay. I'll start again alphabetically. Paul DeBenedictis. Aye. Sue McInturf.
Aye.
Sally Ricciardi.
Aye.
Rich West.
Aye.
Tom Uhas.
Aye.
Motion is.
Okay, thank you. There was a copy of the June cash flow statement that was circulated. It reflected the claims that we'll address in a minute, with the exception of the claim for flowers in the commercial districts, which is under discussion at a later agenda point. So I don't know if there are any questions about the cash flow statement, or we don't need to formally approve this. It's just sort of an informational document. If there are no questions about that, then I'd move on to the claims. Karen circulated and updated twice the claims report for July. I think there was an addition of the Toyer Group invoice for the first amendment to those claims, and then also a correction on the designation for the town pilot network, which are branding expenses for advertising in the Lakes magazine. So are there any questions about any of those claims, setting aside again the one from Elizabeth's Garden for the time being?
Rich, is the stormwater principal and interest, do we pay that twice a year? Or is that an annual payment?
Karen, can you chime in on that? I thought it was semi-annual, but I may be wrong.
And I'm assuming that's for the bond payment, correct?
Yes, that I do know.
I'm sorry, I don't know how to unmute my computer apparently. Yeah, there's two payments. One's in February and the other one is August. The one in February is just interest only.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions about any of the claim? If not, could I entertain a motion to approve all the claims with the exception of the Elizabeth's Garden one?
I'll make a motion to approve those.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
This is Sue. I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further discussion on the June claims? If not, Paul, could I ask that you poll the members?
Am I coming through now?
And now you are, yes.
All right. Paul DeBenedictis, aye. Sue McIntyre,
Aye.
Sally Ricciardi,
Aye.
Rich West,
Aye.
Tom Uhas.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Okay, thank you. If no one has any objection, Jerry Chavez is on the phone. He has a brief update on a couple of items related to MCDC and has asked if we could move him forward on the agenda. Does anybody have a problem with that? All right, if not, then we'll skip down to the old business under MCDC progress report. I think Jerry was going to report on the team working on the technology knowledge-based business recruitment, and I think also or report on the microloan program. So Jerry, are you on? Jonathan, can you tell if the phone is Jerry's? I can only see the last two digits.
There are two phone numbers on, but I don't recognize either one. Did you say read the last two digits?
Well, no, I can see the last two digits,
Oh,
but that's
there
all.
he is.
Jerry, did you just log in?
Can you hear me now?
Now we can, yes. Go ahead, you're on.
Sorry about that.
Gary, I don't know if you just tuned in, but we moved you up on the agenda so that you had a brief report on the recruitment efforts on the knowledge, or the recruitment plan, I should say, on the technology and knowledge-based business, and then also probably an update on the microloan program.
Yeah, we can. Last time we had this conversation, and in between that and now, we've got the draft of the knowledge-based business marketing plan. I wouldn't say at the final form, but pretty close. And in our conversations with Jonathan, Rich, as well as Jenny, we are requesting that we put a pause on this until we can get a higher or a larger group to talk about not only this particular product and deliverable, but how, in addition to how everybody works together for the overall benefit of the community itself. So we are requesting that until such time that we can visit with, I believe the agencies are Main Street, Visitors Center, some others, council members, CRC and MCDC, which is what I anticipate will come about in September. We're asking CRC to give us some flexibility in our deliverable to have that product delivered after that joint meeting occurs.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. I think the other major group on that is the chamber. And
Duly noted.
Other any questions for Jerry on that, or comments from the members of the commission?
Sure, Jerry, this is Paul.
Yes, sir.
You and I had met between the last meeting and this one, and talked about a lot of things, and one of them was coming, with the final form of the plan. I shared with you what my focus would have been is having something that can be implemented by our town and by the people in our town. Have you gotten feedback between our conversation and now that give you a level of confidence that we'll get a plan that we can execute and implement?
Very good question. We integrated some of our conversation. As I recall, there was some comments by both Jonathan and Rich. Those are incorporated as well. And I think to answer your point directly, yes. Shortly after the meeting, I think we'll be able to have the plan in its final form. But going into the meeting, I think it's very beneficial to have all these entities that work for the benefit of Culver, just to share ideas within this plan and other plans that they're thinking of as well. And so what hasn't been asked, and I'll put it on the table before you get there, in my conversations with both Rich and Jonathan, the topic of payment for the final draft is still on the table, and I had requested or shared with Rich that it's my intent not to request that final payment until you guys have your final plan in hand. But that doesn't preclude us, Paul, from still enacting, still engaging with the other entities as we have laid out within the business attraction plan. Those items are still occurring even without the plan.
Well, does that address your questions currently, at least?
It does on the implementation. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Anyone else on the commission with questions for Jerry about that plan at this point in time? I'm just going to do a quick poll just to make sure we don't miss anybody. Sue?
No.
Okay. Sally?
I don't have any questions.
Okay, Tom?
I'm good, thank you.
All right, and I'm good at this point also. because it is part of our contract as a deliverable with some specific timelines on it, if we're going to change this, I would suggest we do it by motion of commission, and that I would entertain a motion that we defer the deliverable timeline for the final plan, the recruitment of technology and knowledge-based business until sometime this fall.
I would offer it specifically to occur shortly after the joint meeting.
Okay.
Can we just take a few minutes to talk about what that meeting is going to be about and how it's different from the meeting we had like a year ago where Marty Osterbahn, facilitated it and we put that plan together?
I think, Sue, I'd be happy to talk about that. Then I think it's fine if we do that. I'd suggest perhaps later on the agenda, I'd be happy to introduce that as new, or let you introduce that as new business.
Okay,
So,
that's fine.
okay. All right. Is anybody interested in making a motion that we defer the execution of this plan until after the larger group meets to discuss an economic development plan?
This is Tom. I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Is there a second to that motion?
Sally, I'll second.
Okay. All right. So there's a motion been made to defer the deliverable for the final plan from MCEDC on a technology and knowledge-based business until this fall after the larger group meets to discuss economic development in Culver. Made by Tom, seconded by Sally. Is there any discussion? Okay. If not, Paul, could you poll the members, please?
Certainly. Paul De Benedictis, aye. Sue McIntyre,
Aye.
Sally Ricciardi,
Aye.
Rich West,
Aye.
Tom Uhas.
Aye.
It is passed unanimously.
And the second part of your question, Rich, was can we give an update on the microloan program? I'm happy to say that Culver's first microloan was approved today. Please don't ask me the details because some of this is confidential, obviously, because it does take, it is a business that resides in town. They did take a loan, and it appears that we still have a little bit more paperwork to do, but my hope is to be issuing them funds probably within a week, maybe a little bit longer. And by way of information, this is a relatively new process for us at MCEDC. I just want to make sure that I do that in a fashion that is approved by USDA.
Okay. Any?
And I would anticipate your second loan application will be coming forthwith, strong loan, probably within 2 weeks.
Okay.
So congratulations.
Good to hear.
Good. Good. Any questions for Jerry on the microloan program? I don't think there's anything actionable on that.
Nope.
So I would jump back up to our regularly scheduled agenda and the town manager report. Jonathan, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Rich. I sent, I think, some notes on Thursday, so if you have any questions on that, but jump over stellar projects in general. Rich, Amber, and I did go through the beach lodge today. We still have some outstanding items from our last invoice, as well as retainage on the building. So I'm working on a list of all of that. If anybody wants to see the full list, let me know, but it's a lot of the same stuff we have been waiting on since substantial completion. They just haven't, some things they've kind of missed on, others involved.
People please silence their device so we don't get the background noise unless you're talking. Thank you.
Other things involved coordination with companies outside of the contract that took a little longer than we would have liked, but things like the phone line and things like that, where we had to bring in AT&T, and just trying to get all that coordinated and cleaned up. But we still have those outstanding items, and Rich, Amber, and I were talking about just asking to meet with Michiana and Steve Park, the architect, in person, which we haven't really done in a couple months, just to go over the list and finalize the timeline to make sure everything gets done soon and we can disperse those final funds and be done. So that's all in Beach Lodge. On Cavalier Park, that project reached substantial completion on June 30th. We had a couple real small punch list items, but that was looking really good. I think my biggest concern after the walkthrough was just the timing of planning being a little later than what we would have hoped for. I don't know how well the grass is going to do, but it looks like we did get some rain. It came in a little better than even I was expecting so far. So they realize they'll probably have to come back in and do a second round in the fall. But was looking pretty good, unless if Karen, did you have anything to add there on Cavalier Park?
There's just a couple of punch items. People may find the restrooms are still locked or unlocked because we're still trying to figure out the programming of those locks. It's not that we're trying to keep people out or keep people in, but other than that, I think, yeah, we're good.
Okay, yeah, we've got a sign ordered for it. It'll be 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. will be the hours on it. Hopefully that'll get up soon. But basically, if people want to go use it, they're welcome to do so. For our NDOT projects, we're still pretty much on schedule there. The environmental review subcontractor is a little behind, but there was some cushion built into those. So hopefully we get that all taken care of and no delays to construction, which are all scheduled for next year right now. One last stellar project item was the trail section in front of the Beach Lodge, basically from the Beach Lodge to the lighthouse. That was a Thomas excavating project funded by CRC last year, and it's been a year since completion, and they're asking for a release of their construction bond on that project. And so I'd ask for your authorization from the CRC to sign the bond release for Thomas excavating.
And there are no problems with that that paving or anything else, or the
Nope.
related to their section?
Yeah,
Okay.
we don't have any concerns or items with their portion of it.
Okay. All right. Can we get a motion to release the bond for Thomas Excavating on the their section of the bike and walking path through the park?
This is Sally. I'll so move.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
This is Paul. I'll second that.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion to release the bond for Thomas Excavating for their section of the improvement on the bike path and walking path in the park, made by Sally, seconded by Paul. Any discussion? If not, we'll move the question. Paul, could you poll the members, please?
Certainly. Paul DeBenedictis, aye. Sue McIntyre,
Aye.
Sally Ricciardi,
Aye.
Rich West,
Aye.
Tom Uhas.
Aye.
It is unanimous.
Thank you, Paul. Moving on.
Last, for the county stellar item, another partnership with the schools. We submitted the location for a electronic message board sign, that there are several of these going up around the county. The budget of Okra funds that are available for it, actually it's, I believe it's 25,000 available for our local sign here in Okra funds. And there's a $5,000 match that's being provided by Marshall County Tourism. So we have a total of $30,000, but Shannon McLeod, grant administrator that we use for a lot of stuff and that's involved with the Marshall County Stellar Okra Grant Administration, is working on getting that out to bid. And once that's done, we'll have an idea. The goal is to get all those done with no additional local expenses for anyone. But, you know, until you actually get, I guess, bids back, you never No, 100% for sure, but all we've done so far is submitted that location there at the corner of School Street and 10 and 17, and we know the budget of Okra and tourism funds that we have available, and I believe it'll be late summer, early fall that Shannon's hoping to have those back, so we have an idea of what the cost will be there. And that, if there's any questions, that's all I had, other than the municipal utility study that Paul and I both will talk a little bit about. Any questions on those items?
Jonathan, this is Tom.
Mhm.
The sign, I'm trying to envision, where's that going to be? Doesn't the school have their signage there, or is that not that corner?
Yeah, it is. It's that corner, Tom. So that's what Karen, I think what we had talked about a little bit was whether or not with those funds available. So they're going to do like kind of a generic bid spec for all the sites and then allow, so we're hoping that comes in, you know, decently under the total 30,000. And then each community can kind of tweak those as they want. And so I think, Karen, we had talked about trying to maybe put it on top of the existing sign or make it look like it belongs there with the existing sign in some fashion. The electronic message board portion of the sign, I think, will be standard throughout the communities, but they're trying to make it somewhat flexible with the company that we can kind of, each community can put your town logo on it and do some different things with it like that. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Any other questions for Jonathan on this report before he and Paul get into the municipal utilities? Okay, I don't know. Paul, Jonathan, go for it.
So,
you got it all written out there.
Sure. Paul, Jenny Monroe, Jim Clevenger, Buzz Crone, and I met with NIPSCO folks last week to explain our interest in starting an electric utility here in Culver. It was the chief counsel and some public relations staff that were on the call. They basically informed us that they wanted to keep us happy as NIPSCO customers, but did not see a path forward legally for us to create our own utility. And so it wasn't, I guess I would characterize it as not having been an incredibly productive call. I mean, we met each other and they didn't seem too thrilled with our idea. And so it's kind of a follow-up. The financial consultant we had worked with, Buzz, offered to reach out to some legal folks that he was familiar with who are kind of experts in the utility law side of things. And we had a follow-up conference call with two individuals from both McKinney and Evans in Indianapolis that do a lot of utility law. And as a response to that, they're putting together a proposal, and they'll walk through it with council at an upcoming executive session. I believe we've scheduled for early August or next week. I'm sorry, I forget the exact date, but the follow-up is to meet with them and go over a proposal that would, I believe the first step they thought would be just to have them analyze the law and take a look at whether or not they think it's worth proceeding for us. And Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the rest of that topic was going to be discussed in more detail during the executive session. But I think you recapped it really well. We've had an initial meeting, and not surprisingly, I think NIPSCO doesn't like the idea of losing a customer. And while we are not unhappy with the level of service we've gotten from NIPSCO, we expressed our intent to review, like we have all our utilities in town, to see what's best fit for Culver going forward. So we wish we could share more, but it's probably not, we don't know enough to share anymore. This is really where we are. And, I guess Rich, you and Sally will both see more of this as part of the town council executive session when that's scheduled.
I assume, Paul, you'll be attending that session also.
They had asked me to, and I certainly have it on my calendar. And I think Jim Clevenger is just confirming that it doesn't break any rules or things, but I plan to.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And just to be clear, we haven't contracted with both McKinney. It's just been, we got a chance to meet a couple of the attorneys and talk about what we were trying to do, and they are interested in submitting a proposal to us. So we're just going to continue that discussion when we get the opportunity.
Okay. All right, good. Thank you.
That's it for me.
Any questions for Paul or Jonathan on that project? Good, thank you, Jonathan. Let's see where we're at here on the agenda. The progress reports from Develop Culver. I just circulated the progress report that I had received from Tracy on what we used to call the Navigator, but I think we're now calling sort of the economic development planning process. And I will, I emailed it out to members of the commission. Her updated comments are at the end of the report, all in red. If you'll like, I can read excerpts from that, or if people want to look at it and then come back to this later in the meeting. The gist of the comments basically are that, as the commission knows, we engage the services of downtown redevelopment consultants and Ben Levinger's group, I'm sorry, to do a study. A couple drafts of that were circulated. It was requested that they do a presentation to a wider audience. And on Friday, unfortunately, we didn't get a lot wider audience. There were 7 participants that were on the Zoom call as he presented the plan again. And I think I know Sue was on the call and a couple of other people. This is certainly not a plan that we're recommending be adopted at this point in time. I think it probably is best a gap analysis. I think it's potentially useful in what the data they used. I think the most useful part of the call was probably the explanation of where they received the data that they used to put together their report. But there are obvious problems that one, there was no visit to the town, and that's because of the COVID situation. The good news is that there was no cost to us associated with this. Ben's group had received a PPP grant or loan, and they had committed to basically provide services for Main Street organizations to help with economic development, to work out those PPP hours, if you will. But there was no visit to town, and I think one of the concerns we also expressed is that in not doing so, really didn't capture culture of Culver, if there is such a thing. I'm sure there is, or I know there is, but I think that was probably lacking, and then also understanding some of the dynamics that we discussed and several times with him. At this point, I think this is the next step, as Tracy puts in, is that we'll collect any comments. The report has been circulated pretty widely. If people have comments or questions, Ben has indicated his willingness to continue to provide information and answer questions. So if you have questions, if you can circulate those to Tracy, and she will forward them to Ben for a response. And again, I think we'll sort of include this as some background information at this point in time, as we move into the larger planning process for economic development. Tracy's words were more eloquent than my recapturing it, but I think that's the gist of it. Jonathan, Sue, you were on the call. Tom, I think you were on the call also. Any comments, questions?
This is Sue. I don't have any questions, but there was information that we talked about, and I feel like the discussion around some of the items was helpful to him, and so from that perspective, it was fine. We just need to have more specific information.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on?
Rich, this is Paul. Just one general comment. And I know
Sure.
everybody wears multiple hats and does many things. I just find it, I would appreciate it if we're able to get things ahead of time. It just helps. It's hard to have a substantive conversation about something when we're looking at it for the first time in the meeting.
I understand and agree. Tracy had sent it to me earlier today. In plowing through my emails, I did not get to it till actually as we were starting the meeting, and so it's my fault that it was not distributed earlier. But I know our goal is to try and get this information out well in advance, so people can adequately prepare. So. Anything else on that subject? On the other website development, the other portion of this project, there really is not anything new to report. I think Danielle had reported at the last meeting the projects that were going on and that had been accomplished, and that I think this is pretty much wound down. And I think any of the companies that have expressed interest have been either serviced or helped to set up a web page. I think the most recent one, Tammy Schaefer's massage business, and Ringer's golf carts. I know were the last two that were brought up. So, and we're not anticipating at this point that there will be any more web projects at this time.
So, Rich, is Danielle still leading this, or still leading this particular project for Develop Culver?
For the time being, yes. I mean, Danielle has resigned her positions as the executive director for both the visitor center and Develop Culver. She's accepted a position with the school corporation.
Well, congratulations to her.
Yeah. Yes, and Karen, I'm sure, is excited to have her join her staff. So at this point, Danielle has an interest in continuing on the boards for the visitor center and Culver. We've advertised for an executive director for the visitor center, and there are interviews that are scheduled for this week for that. I think Danielle has an interest in maintaining involvement, but it's going to be dictated by her primary responsibilities of family and school.
So if we have any questions, who would Develop Culver, or do we put them to you and then you take them back, or what's?
No, I think you could still contact and send questions to Danielle directly if you have questions about the website piece of it, and if there are questions about the original what we call the Navigator, and retitled it to Tracy directly.
Well, and I know the Navigator's kind of shut down because that thing is done, but and Tracy's working on something different. But I agree with you from my point of view that that this was an initial COVID response, and we only gave it life to take it through, I think, May or into June, and it seems to have run its course. It's probably good for us to do an assessment of it. And I'm not talking about volunteering a lot of people to do a lot of things, but if we've identified the 3 or 4 businesses that have used this to take a look at what we got for it. And that's why I don't know if Develop Culver is going to sit there and look at what those businesses got out of this. Are they using it, or is that something that we in CRC would spot check and look into, the Frida, Tammy's, or Culver Coffee Company, or Ringers, to see, to check with them to see how this is, how effective was this for them.
Yeah, my suggestion is, if people agree, I will ask Danielle to put together a survey to circulate tentative questions to members of the commission for ideas on what information or feedback we'd like to get from the businesses that we help develop a website for, and to get some feedback that way. Does that make sense, Paul?
Sure, you could do it that way. I don't see anything wrong with CRC members using that same list of questions and contacting as well. I think that's a good way for us to take a look at, look, we do projects like this. It's always good to get feedback on how effective they were. And I think the businesses would like to know that we are interested in that. So if Danielle can do that in the next week, I'm sure I can think of questions. I'm sure everyone else can. Then
Okay.
It's not many, but you can think of about half a dozen questions to ask, and then get out there and ask those 4 businesses those questions.
Good. I will suggest that to her and ask her to put together some questions and to circulate the tentative ones to the members for input.
How much did we use up all the funds that we'd identified for that?
Let me see if I can find my it's the cash flow statement. If I can,
It doesn't have to be answered right now, Rich, but it's probably, if this has run its course and we shut it down and move on to something else, we should have a closeout on it saying, oh, here's how much we approved up to, I think, 5,000. We had a target of 6 businesses. What did we get? And what was their satisfaction? And what was the effect? And then we have that on record the next time when other people, who either us or whoever's behind us, tries to do something like this, they have a reference point.
yeah, I think at this point, from the cash flow statement, I have to go back to confirm this, but it looks like we've spent about $40,446 on that project. So again, I think on the businesses involved, a couple of them were sort of disappointed that a couple of them engaged to begin with and then just did not follow through. And that was a concern. Where a lot of the lessons learned from this probably would be, next time around, they have probably some type of written agreement with the individual businesses to require them to follow through, or to, because we ended up, I told them to be paid because she spent a considerable amount of time with some of the people, and then they just backed out and decided not to follow through. So
there's things to learn from that too.
I know. Yep. Yes. So, anything else on those 2 questions? And I will talk to Daniel about a post survey. Okay, if not, moving on, the next old business item is the flower planting in the commercial areas. I know Tom had raised this question at our last meeting. We had some discussion about it then. Since then, we have received the invoice. I think I copied the commission members on my response on the invoice, asking for details on time and materials. The original proposal was an approximate $4,200, and I had a couple of questions with Liz before the project started. About containing that in some way, as far as I know, we have not received any response. I did not get any response to my email.
I didn't get anything.
Okay.
So this is Paul. I had asked Rich to put this on under old business, and we've sent emails back and forth last week into today about this. Mine is not about the appropriate level of detail that allows Karen to process the invoice. I was uncomfortable at the end of our meeting in June when this came up, and I'll tell you why. 3 CRC members were dissatisfied with the result or lack of communication of a planting plan from Ms. Beauchamp, and yet no one had spoken to her. And that we talked about it in the meeting, and it made me uncomfortable because the only resolution that we came up with at the time was to scrutinize the invoice when we received it, which to me didn't solve the issue if you were unsatisfied with the end result. I reread the original motion. I thought more about this, and after our meeting in June, I called Ms. Beauchamp. I just didn't think, again, I think at a level, we need a level of transparency and mixed messages. I think we needed to speak to her. And so I told her what had gone on in the meeting, that there were those concerns. And she had told me that she had not been aware of them. She gave me additional information about what the work that she had to do for the proposal that she made to town council, which they approved and asked us to pay for. And I said, well, that's fine. You'll have to submit an appropriate invoice, and you will get questioned on that. But as we talked, I heard mixed messages because in our conversation in June, it was stated that she had not communicated with us a plan. And from my listening to that conversation, I assumed that she was required to give us a plan. I reread the motion that never required her to give us a plan. And she informed me that she actually spoke to the president of our CRC twice. Once initially about excluding the Cove from the original plan. And then I guess that was discussed out. And later a conversation which was related to me where she said, the president of CRC said, I like what you did, you can do the Cove. And that leads to me a mixed message. So I find it's uncomfortable that we are having conversations without involving all the players, or at least announcing to them or asking them to participate. So Ms. Beauchamp didn't know about her concerns until I called her. I didn't see it on the agenda till this morning, and I didn't think she had seen it. So I actually called her again to say, by the way, we're going to discuss this. And I don't think any member in our town should find out about things like this, whether they're pleasant or unpleasant, by going back to hearing from somebody else, or watching the recording and then seeing that was talked about. That doesn't get a resolution. If we are unhappy or dissatisfied with what the plantings look like, we should have the conversation. Or we should have told town council, since they're the ones that approved it, so they could have had that conversation. The second point I want to make is mixed messages. Everyone on this council, or CRC, has multiple jobs. And you speak to it from whatever job you have at the time with the people that you're talking to, but they always see us in this job that we have. And her comments back to me made me feel like she wasn't getting a clear message. I spoke to this individual, he told me it was fine, and yet now you're telling me it's not. What's going on? And I think we have to have the communication and stop sending mixed messages, or it will make our jobs going forward even more difficult, and we will be second guessed on our decisions that we make. So again, my points are about communication, transparency, and mixed messages. At the end of the day, she has to submit an invoice that meets an appropriate requirement that can be paid out through our treasurer. but I think we're missing a point by not inviting people in or making them aware if we're going to talk about an issue that relates to them. And the reason I say this, because somebody has come up to me about a future issue about the mural on the firehouse, and I didn't know where to go with that. And I'm not going to bring it up here until, you know, I ask somebody to go talk to other people about it, and if it becomes an issue, then we would put it on the agenda. But I just think we're limiting ourselves by not reaching out and having this level of communication. And that's what I wanted to say.
Okay. And I don't, I understand and I appreciate what you're saying, Paul. I agree with some of it. I disagree with other parts of it. I would be happy to set up a sit down if you would like with Liz and you and other members of the commission if you'd like to talk about it. I think that there's some, I guess I would, but I don't want to debate the individual issues here, but I think that there were some earlier communications that I'll just leave it at that. So do you have a suggestion on, particularly on where we go from here?
I would say that where we go from here is if we have an issue that we want to talk about and it involves an organization or members or a business that comes up, and even if we bring it up as a member input, I just think it's appropriate that they're given a heads up about this, you know, and then that it can be resolved, because it bothered me, it made me uncomfortable that the resolution that we came up with in June wasn't a resolution at all. It was just to confirm that we would make sure we would go through the books. It wasn't a resolution about the dissatisfaction that several members had said about the plantings. So it didn't strike me as it didn't solve anything, and it didn't do anything for goodwill or communication. And I'm glad to talk with somebody else about this and meet about this. I purposely wanted to have this in an open forum and not do this offline with individuals, because I think this is part of how we operate and should operate with transparency in our governance. Those are the points I wanted to make.
Okay, thank you. Other comments, questions, concerns from other members of the commission?
Rich, this is Sally, and
Yes.
frankly, you know, if she's gotten mixed messages, then I wonder if, you know, I think that she did the plantings in good faith, and I think we should pay the invoice that she submitted. I don't think that the things that you had requested are the type of things that we normally request from anyone else. So I would make a motion that we pay her invoice, have Karen pay the invoice.
Okay. So Sally has made a motion. Do we have a second on that motion?
This is Paul. I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion that's been made by Sally to pay the invoice submitted by Elizabeth's Garden, or Garden by Elizabeth, I'm sorry, for $4,200 for the project of planting flowers in the commercial areas of town. Is there further discussion about that?
This is Tom. Are we then not, was our request, I'm a little confused. Is our request for a detailed invoice then null and void?
I think Sally's motion was to pay the invoice as presented. Correct, Sally?
this is Sally. Normally, if we have a contractor do some work for the town of Culver or for the CRC, we don't ask them how many nuts and bolts they had to buy or what the cost was to them. If we agreed on the amount, then we pay the amount.
But the amount, it was challenged and all we wanted is additional information and that hasn't been supplied.
Well, my information, as I understand, last week, I didn't realize that the Cove was included in that. If they included the Cove as well, then, and Rich did in fact tell her that everything looked good, then I would say that she submitted the kind of invoice that we normally pay. And, her actual cost on flowers, etc., and labor is not normally requested it wasn't requested in the original, so why would we demand it now?
It was not part of the original proposal, correct?
Because the numbers didn't match what, I guess,
Just
specific numbers in here. We got verbal numbers, I think, and that was why we were just asking questions. I don't understand why it's so difficult to provide that information.
Just as a point of clarification on the Cove, because that is, or maybe somewhat confusing issue. The Cove is in the TIF district. In fact, the Cove properties are the largest single provider of revenue to the TIF. The Cove every year does plantings themselves, and I'd asked Kathy Kucera, who's the executive director there, if she wanted to do them or Elizabeth do them. Kathy said, well, if Elizabeth wants to do them, we can look at that, and that's when I went back to Elizabeth and said, well, Kathy said, go ahead. So it was not my decision. I was I put myself in probably in a situation I should not have, and just had Kathy talk directly to Elizabeth about it. It also included flowers in the park, and so Amber thought that there were probably about 5 flats of petunias that were planted in the park. So any other comments or questions on the motion that's before us?
I guess the only other comment I make is possibly this could have been avoided if we had 2 bids for the project. As far as I know, it's one thing I'm a little confused from Paul is that it was approved by town council, but then sent to us to pay for it. I mean, we didn't have to approve it. I think we approved it and we agreed to pay for it.
Well, wait. Tom, let's see. That's a good point, Tom. Sally, yeah. Rich, you were both there when it went, because the
town council.
How did it get to us?
Town council referred it to the Redevelopment Commission because it was for plantings in the business district.
Well, Rich suggested that it could be done as a facade grant through the CRC and asked to take it there first, and the council approved it if the CRC didn't.
Thank you, Jenny.
But it wasn't presented as a facade grant.
No, it was not.
That was my idea. Just telling you what the conversation was at council.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor that's been made and seconded. Closing discussion. If there's nothing else, Paul, could you poll the members, please?
Certainly. Paul De Benedictis, aye. Sue McIntyre.
Nay.
Sally Ricciardi.
Aye.
Rich West.
Aye.
Tom Uhas.
Aye.
The motion is passed on a majority.
Okay, thank you. Um, New business facade grants. Tom, any updates or any new information?
I have had no contact regarding any further work or applications regarding the Collins building, and also no other new applications for facade grants.
Could you sort of tweak my memory a bit? Where do we stand with the Bob Nowak? Do you know what?
I mean, the next thing is for him to do the work.
Okay.
I mean, we had approved his proposal.
Right.
And now it's just a matter of he's got to get it done and submit us a final bill. So
right.
What's
okay.
going on a day-to-day basis, I do not know. Sorry
okay.
about that.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
He had been working on the building quite a bit himself, and then it seemed to slow down. I believe he has a contract with Easterday to do some work. So I just wondered.
Sorry, this is Jonathan. There's a note in the chat box there. Looks like Kevin Berger just lost it. Went away. I think it said he was waiting on the Mason schedule. Yeah, there it is.
Okay. All right. Yeah, the last I talked to Bob and Kevin, but that was probably a month ago. So okay. All right. So nothing else on facade grants. Sue, other new business, you had raised a question concerning the larger economic development planning initiative. Would you like to talk about that now?
Yes, I sent a note to Jonathan. I'm just wondering what the difference was between this and what we had done. My memory doesn't serve me correctly, but in the last 12, 18 months ago, that Marty Osterbaum facilitated, and we put together that plan. How is this different than that?
I think my understanding is that it's looking to engage a larger group for input. When we did this last fall, it was the Redevelopment Commission. I think council members were invited, and members of the Main Street organization or Develop Culver participated in that workshop.
And Liz was there. Chamber was there. I don't remember if Marshall County Economic Development was there.
No, they were not. I did not. Okay. I didn't remember Liz being there, but okay.
So
do you want me to try to answer this, Rich or Jonathan?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Liz.
Go ahead.
Liz was not there. No, I was
Yeah.
not there, Rich. You're correct.
Jenny, why don't, if you'd like to step in?
Okay. Yeah, so originally, I think in the fall or whenever that was, Main Street was looking at inventorying businesses, doing a gap analysis, some of the things that I think came out with this guy's plan. And then it developed into, okay, we're going to look at economic development on Main Street. And I don't know what became of it. Honestly, I wasn't there because that's back when my dad and mom both had surgery, so I didn't make it. But it's just become somewhat obvious that we're not all working from the same page organizationally. And what we all have in common is economic development. CRC more so on the economic development side, Main Street on the tourism side, visitor center more the tourism side, Develop Culver, and we just all seem to be working in a vacuum. And I just, from the perspective of the town itself, I think we should be facilitating and leading an effort toward getting us all on the same page with some common goals. What do we want our economic future to look like 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Particularly coming out of COVID, A lot has changed because of that. So, and in the meantime, there are projects taking place that people don't even know about. So, for example, I told Jonathan I had no idea paint was going to show up in the intersections in Culver. I like it. I think it looks nice. It serves a purpose, but I had no idea it was there. The town council should know when something's going to happen on a road or we're going to shut down a road. Should know when something's going to happen on a public building that we own. Had no idea the mural was going on the fire department walls. So I just feel like we're all sort of working in our own autonomous groups instead of working together. And obviously we all have concerns about businesses thriving in Culver, no matter what the business size or the business type. So the ultimate goal of bringing the organizations together is to try to come up with some common outcomes that we all want to see, and then define which organization should be working on those. So I personally think Main Street is supposed to be all about Main Street. It's also about marketing Main Street. But I think that's far different than economic development. So, we all have a different perception of what is involved with economic development. And unfortunately, we're all sort of working on our own thing. And this includes the Plan Commission, who, zones properties for economic development. And if we're not all sort of working together in the same direction, I'm not sure I see the point of that. It just seems like we're less effective the way we're going at it. So I talked to Jonathan about bringing each of the organizations together. I know that's hard to do with COVID and social distancing and all of that, but I think it's really important, particularly with things changing so rapidly because of COVID. And we saw what our retail merchants and our restaurants went through with COVID. How do we prepare ourselves for that potentially being the new normal? I also think that there are county organizations that work with us, like Jerry, whether it's microloan program or some other economic development thing. We're unique in Culver. We're different than a lot of the surrounding communities. And we all need to get on the same page. That's the real purpose, Sue, if I'm being honest.
Okay, yeah, and I appreciate that, and I am too. It just seems, my only concern is we seem to meet a lot. We have all these different, over the last number of years we have all these different studies and discussions and plans, but implementations always seems to be the gap. So then when we do implement, I guess maybe the key is how do we communicate that implementation part, and maybe more than getting together and doing a new plan again. That's, I guess, just my confusion about why we're going to do another plan when I thought we'd already done that several times. But I agree that
if we did do a plan in the fall, I honestly don't know what that plan is. If something came out of those fall sessions, I don't have my hands on it to see it. I wasn't part of it. It also tells me we didn't engage enough stakeholders and enough of the public during that process for it to gain any traction. And any plan we do have, and maybe we start with that particular plan and take a look at it, but any plan we do have, I think we need to define the working task behind it. So sort of like what we did with the comprehensive plan, we built that 5-year action plan, and that action plan pretty much told us, okay, now we need money for this action plan. That's when we went after Stellar. Same thing here. If there's an economic development plan, there should be associated short-term goals, long-term goals, and who's working on them. Because I think CRC has funding capability for a lot of those plans, but you're not necessarily going to just cherry pick random little projects the way we've done in the past, I mean, some of those things are going to be short term, some are going to be long term. But if there is an economic development plan, I don't think any of us has it. And we haven't had one come out of the county organization either. I know Jerry's working on this attract knowledge-based or tech-based businesses as a quote plan. But anything we do, I think, needs to engage a broader audience, because a lot of us have to be concerned with this topic, and I just don't know that we've done that.
For clarification, just to go back on last fall, it was an initiative that began with the CRC, and Paul had agreed to take the 5 prior plans and to sort of summarize them and to look at sort of what was left on those lists. And the objective of the meeting was for CRC to come up with a target list for the next, did we say 24 to 36 months of projects to address. One of them was the municipal utilities plan. There were a couple of I think was the knowledge-based recruitment, one of the items that rose on that plan. So it was initiated by CRC. There were a lot of documents that were circulated. I know, and I understand and appreciate what was going on personally with you, but I know that the plan and its preliminary results were shared with the council, and that there were a couple of matrices that we looked for feedback on. So that was, and I don't disagree with you on it not including a broader audience. And I think that is an admirable task, and I think I don't disagree with that at all. But I think to understand what happened last fall was it was an initiative for CRC to develop, okay, what do we think are the things that we should be addressing? What was missed in all of those prior plans that had not been implemented? We found that there were a number of items that were still relevant to the needs in our community. So.
Right, and wayfinding was one of those, the street signs. I mean, there were some, so, yeah. Okay.
Right. Well, and to me, wayfinding could be some small part of a larger economic development plan. But if we're going to put wayfinding paint on the streets, it still has to come through the town council. And maybe it came to the town council in May when I wasn't there, when my dad was in hospice, but it just struck me as odd that I had no idea it was coming. And if it was discussed at some point in council, I don't have any recollection of it. I found out about the mural going on the fire department wall because the MCCF director told me that we applied for a grant for that. I assume that grant was applied for through Develop Culver or Visitor Center or one of those. And it's not to say I don't like the mural. I do. It's just, it's on a government-owned building. And this is what I mean by I feel like we're working in a vacuum. I'm not trying to criticize anyone or be adversarial because I appreciate a lot of the projects that have been underway and are getting accomplished. But we all need to sort of be on the same page together. And if we have council members who are clueless these things are happening, or we're not being inclusive about how we engage business owners, etc. I just want to make sure we're doing that. I don't feel like we've been thorough with that. I could be totally wrong, Sue, and maybe we're just rehashing something. But we're not working off of some sort of economic development plan the last 6 months. I know that because I have been at enough council meetings to know there's no plan in front of me that I'm aware of. If I were, I would remember it. So, and I'm not trying to be critical of the work that got done. I just want us all to be moving forward in the same direction as a much broader, larger group, much like we did Stellar, as painful as it is. I just think it works better when we're engaging everybody. And I do get the feeling that organizationally, I can't put my finger on it because I'm not part of the chamber and I'm not part of Develop Culver. and I'm not on the Plan Commission, and I'm not on the CRC. But as an outsider to those organizations, I think there are some misunderstandings, miscommunications, or maybe roles not clearly defined. Whatever it is, I feel like we can work that out if we're all in a room together, plugging away at this.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's where we're headed now, hopefully with this program early this fall. Are there other comments or questions on this item, or can we move on to any other new business? First, is there a closed discussion on this? Agreement on that or not?
I just would like to comment
Go ahead.
that I don't know that we're working in a vacuum, all of these individual people, because are you saying that we need to get everybody together at one point in time to decide that we want to do whatever project CRC has in mind to do? And the other thing I would bring up is, again, in regards to council, CRC has 2 council members on the CRC. And I would think that you would be well informed of what's going on in CRC, because you have 2 of our members are your members. So to think that
That's not the issue. Honestly, I don't feel like I'm out of touch with the CRC. I feel like we have projects going on with Develop Culver, Visitor Center, even Chamber, this organization paying for a lot of those things often. And I just personally don't think we have a vision for what we want in terms of economic development. And I think we should all be talking about that together. And we should all be talking about what things are looking like in this COVID environment that we've just been through. And things are happening that have been done in a vacuum. Maybe not by the CRC, but and oftentimes we don't get a full report from any of the organizations. I haven't seen, we've been having Zoom meetings, so that's a huge part of it, I'm sure. But I haven't seen anyone from any of the organizations report to the council other than Rich on CRC. So we're going into budget time. I'm sure we'll hear from some of the organizations because they're going to need money. But that's the other point of it, is if we're going to invest dollars into economic development, let's all know what we're investing in.
All right. Any other comments from members of the commission, or Jenny, Jonathan, anything? I think that exhausts at least the agenda items that were on the agenda. Are there any new items? I'll just go through the commission members. Sally, do you have anything?
No.
Okay, Sue?
I just wanted to thank Paul for his thoroughness in working with the Marshall County Economic Development Group on this technology, tech and knowledge industry recruitment plan. I thought your asking and looking for specifics was very timely and needed to be done. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Sue.
Yes, well, echo that appreciation. Anything else, Sue?
No, that's it.
Tom?
I am good, thank you.
Okay. Paul?
Nothing at this time.
Okay. And I'm drawing a blank. So I think in open up, is there anyone in the public or staff who are on the call who would like to raise a question, an issue? Jonathan, you said there was something in the chat box. Was that earlier, or was that?
Yeah, that was addressed earlier.
Okay. All right. Thank you. If there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll
Okay.
second.
All right. So, Paul, would you like to query the group?
Certainly. I'll start just top to bottom. Rich West,
Aye.
Sally Ricciardi,
Aye.
Paul DeBenedictis, aye. Sue McInturf,
Aye.
Tom Uhas,
Aye.
and Karen, you always get asked.
Aye. Thank you.
You're welcome. Unanimous.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for all the participants. I know it was, there were some, I guess, some serious discussion. I think everyone is committed to doing what they think is the right thing and to working hard for Culver, and I appreciate that. And so we will move forward from here. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a good evening and stay safe and wear your mask.
Right.